2022 City Commission meeting. Allegiance, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first of all, we're going to consider the minutes of the August 8th, 2023 meeting. I trust everyone has read.
I would move we approve the minutes from the August 8th meeting.
I second that.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, that passes. Number two, the 2024 budget. And item A, we're going to conduct a public hearing on the RNR rate for 2024, and Donna's going to give us a little slideshow.
Yes, we're just going to kind of go over some of the slides that we've went over previously during your work sessions. The first one shows our assessed valuation and how much a meal equals of $152,886. This was a 10.01% increase over November 2022's assessed valuation. Each meal increased by $13,921. We were informed by the Harvey County clerk that our revenue neutral rate was going to go down to 65.221 from our rate we had last year of 70.383. This rate is expressed in meals, what would generate the same property tax revenue in dollars as levied in 2022 using 23's assessed valuation. What this means is that we would lose 5.162 meals or $789,000 of the increased valuation. We went through two different workshops, June 15th and 28th. Several items were put forth and we discussed what we should do, especially with the general fund. And the option that was chosen by the commission was to increase the meal by 1.5 and move one meal from the bond and interest. This would gain an additional $229,000 of tax revenue. And that would bring our meal to 71.883. The next is a little bitty slide. This just, when we went over this, it kind of shows what our projection would be for the future and what each fund would be. There's 5 funds that have property tax. The airport, the library, and the special liability fund would not change. Their mill would stay the same. Bond and interest would go down 1, and the general fund would raise 2.5 mils because we're moving 1 from bond and interest. The impact of this on the homeowners, we looked at what 1.5 mils would do, and it would be a yearly increase on a $100,000 home of $17.25. That does not account for the valuation increase also on that homeowner. Where the property tax dollars go, we looked at, this is the rate of what we would do in 2024. The other two are still the old rates from 23 for the other, because we don't know what they'll be. Just kind of showed what a $100,000 house would pay, $2,000 annually, and where those taxes would go and how they broke down. One reason the commission decided to go up 1.5 mils is we need to fill the 2 positions that were put on hold, 1 for fire, EMS, and 1 for police. Also, it would bring our general fund up to the level of at least 13%, pretty close to where our fund balance should be. We have to maintain a balance of 15% of our budgeted expenditures. And that has been policy for the last several years. So what you need to do now is open the public hearing, hear from anyone who wants to talk on not raising or raising the revenue neutral rate.
Okay, at this time, we're going to open the public hearing for anyone who would like to get up and speak. Come up to the podium, please.
Good evening. My name is Matt Ricks. I am a homeowner here in Newton, and I would like to personally voice strong opposition to the proposed property tax increase. I believe I speak for a majority of middle-class Americans in saying that we are tired of being taxed generally. Between the 20% income tax, an 8.5% sales tax, and the numerous other ways small businesses and families alike are taxed by way of things like payroll tax, inheritance tax, permits, and certifications, I would say that we're being suffocated by tax burdens already. And that's not to include the inflation that has taken place over the last few years as well. Generally, property taxes are proposed so that we may have more money to better the community. But I would argue that history proves that communities flourish not under higher taxes, but lower taxes, where more money goes not into government hands and their many bureaucracies, but into the pockets of hardworking men and women. So I would appeal to you, my fellow middle-class Americans, to seek the betterment of the city not through the use of government, but through the means of fellow laborers. And to not raise property taxes, it would be a small step, I think, in the right direction, but we must not despise the day of small beginnings. I would say an even better step would actually be to decrease property taxes to lighten the load that we're all bearing right now. And so before you, I make this appeal, and I pray that the triune God who granted you your place of authority would give you wisdom as you continue to govern this town. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Ricks, if I may, please, could you, I know you gave us your name, but we will need your address for the permanent record. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name's Terry Scott. I live at 745 Normandy Court here in Newton. And I just want to reiterate the gentleman's comments on this. I was at the county meeting this morning, and we had quite the robust discussion about R&R and the budget. And I would just like to say here as well that we are all, as he said, taxed very heavily. We all have to look, when we're looking at our personal budgets, we have to make cuts. You know, unless we go out and get a second job or some other source of revenue, we have to make cuts. And so I urge you and all of the city employees to look in the different departments and reduce the budget. They need to be working more efficiently, and if they don't know how to do that, there are people that can help them with that. Thank you. This is a very quiet group tonight.
Thank you.
I just asked a question. Is this the time to talk about the budget, or is there going to be a repeat of this after the R&R discussion?
There's going to be a repeat.
That doesn't matter. I'll wait.
Technically, this is the R&R public hearing. We'll reopen another public hearing for the budget.
Hello, my name is Rick Kraft. My wife is Rosemary Kraft. We moved here in 2021 to be with our children and grandchildren. My wife is retired. I'm working, but I took a $2 per hour pay cut in the same occupation. We moved from Colorado Springs, Colorado, We paid property taxes of $1,462 yearly on a value of a home of $289,000 in 2021. In 2021, our property taxes here were $5,705. In 2022, our property taxes are $6,549, an increase of $844. Our property value is $278,000 here in Kansas. Now you want to raise our taxes again, approximately $451, that'll total over $7,000. We respectfully request that there be no increase. We cannot afford this at this time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Who's next? Well, okay, at this time, we're going to close the public hearing for the R&R. Next item, we're going to consider a resolution accepting the R&R.
I would like to ask really quickly here, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think it would be a good time to offer a brief explanation on the R&R with regard to where it originated from. That is not something that we created. And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm,
Yep.
I'm,
No, I'd be happy to.
I
Yeah.
think it would be good because I don't, it took us a while
It's
to.
it's new and unique for us, even though this is the second year technically we've been under, or
Technically second.
the second year.
Yes.
Yeah. So the revenue neutral rate, or the R&R, that Commissioner Valentine is referring to, for the benefit of those here in the audience or maybe watching at home. So the revenue neutral rate was instituted by a new state statute that originated in the Senate a couple of years ago, and it was put into effect pretty immediately after it was instituted. So all of our local governments, which is counties, cities, townships, the Recreation Commission, fire districts, libraries, anyone basically who is any kind of public taxing entity, except for the state, they exempted themselves, are required to do this hearing in addition to the normal public hearing. So what the revenue neutral rate means in kind of layman's terms is that if the valuation of your property goes up per the county appraiser's value and review every year, that is a county responsibility by statute. And so the county appraises your property. If the value of your property goes up, that technically reduces the local jurisdiction's ability to receive those property taxes. So this revenue neutral rate means that the mill levy might go up and down. I think Ms. Donna mentioned, I might go back here in the slides if it's helpful. So the revenue neutral rate, here we go. This is what it's looking for here. So the original mill levy rate for just the city of Newton was 53.711. If we went with the revenue neutral rate, which accounts for the increased valuation of everyone's property, even if our mill levy rate doesn't change, basically we're not revenue neutral any longer. So even though our expenses continue to increase, whether it is cost of supplies, materials, whether it's concrete, rebar, personnel, whatever those things might be, that is not accounted for in the state statute by the revenue neutral rate. So the state statute now says that we should actually reduce our revenues and reduce the mill levy to 49.772 mills versus the current rate, which would be for this coming year, which would be 53.711. So this is a new statutory requirement, and it requires an additional public hearing in addition to the normal public hearing we also will have tonight. Is that kind of what you were envisioning, Commissioner? I mean, it's,
I think that.
even to staff, it's still new, and we're still getting used to it and trying to make sure we dot all our i's and cross all our t's. And
it's bringing in the same amount of money that the 53.711 mills brought in last year. This year, the exact same money would be 49,772. You don't get your increased valuation at all.
Right. So even if we didn't change the actual mill levy, we couldn't recapture the increased valuation of those, of the new property valuation.
Yeah, that increase includes both new property that wasn't
New
being
property
taxed
that wasn't,
before.
yeah. And remember, we're taxing, the state of Kansas tax in arrears by an entire calendar year. So what you're paying for now is going to be your actual 2022 property taxes is what you're paying in calendar year 23.
Doesn't allow you to pick up the increase in value for new
Correct, sir.
houses.
So
and it
like, yeah,
doesn't allow
houses,
you to pick
industrial,
up the
commercial.
increase in actual value of existing businesses or houses. And the sad truth, I own property in several counties, and almost, well, every county that I own property in is doing the same thing we're doing here with the R&R. And the burden of the cost to do all the notification falls on, so it actually is increasing costs, and almost all counties are ignoring it anyway.
And if you do not raise your revenue neutral rate, you would keep it at the 65.221 is what it comes in this year. And if you go $1 over and you collect just $1 more in tax, you get in trouble, and you have to make sure you refund all that money back to the county. That's why most entities raise their revenue neutral rate to at least what they were, so that you won't get in trouble and have to refund money.
Well, I thought that probably has a bigger impact, especially considering the loss of revenue if we would remain at the current.
Right.
And that was really not a decision that we made as far as how that is calculated. The state does not like the federal government interfering in how they run their business, or not their business, but how they do the business of the state. But the state does not mind having some sort of, for lack of better words, control over how locales do the business of their communities. So I just feel like that's important. If we just simply heard the testimonies of our citizens and then we just went on in and voted, I think they need to understand. And I'm not trying to discredit anybody's understanding if you didn't have it or you did, but I feel like it was important to mention.
And hopefully I wasn't too confusing with that. It's still, like I said, it's still really even new to the local jurisdictions. And this is an additional public hearing in addition to the normal public hearing we've all already been required to do for many, many years. So.
Thank you all for the extra explanations. More information is better than less. Okay, let's move on to B, and we're going to consider a resolution accepting the R&R.
That resolution number will be G-1318.
I will move that we accept Resolution G-1318.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
We have to.
We have, just a moment, we have to do a roll call vote, so I will have to call each of you individually, and you will have to answer, so.
Yeah, no, there's new statutory thing, excuse us, please. So.
Okay.
I am going to start at the far end with Commissioner Valentine,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Cry,
Yes.
Mayor Kane,
Yes.
Commissioner Stinnett.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, item C, we're going to conduct a public hearing on the 2024 budget.
Okay, on the next slide, you'll see what I put in the paper. It shows our actual expenditures that we are estimating for the proposed budget for 2024 of $58,668,728. And there's actually $2,830,000 of reserve balances included in that amount. So the budgeted expenditures for 24 are actually $55,838,724,000, which is less than what we budgeted last year. And mainly the difference is because we're not going to make that extra $1 million payment on the plan upgrade. So that lowered our expenditures by that much. And then there's another $300,000 that we did come down. We did make several cuts in the budget. We moved things around from 2023 so that we didn't have to spend that money. We cut different things. We reduced consultant technical fees like $70,000 in fire. We didn't hire 2 positions. We moved a few things to economic development that was better placed there than they would be spending them out of general. We reduced demolition expenses by $25,000. Everything we could think of that we cut for 23. And then we also did the same thing for 24. And we cut $576,000 out of 24's budget. So in the past few years, we have worked diligently to cut costs and expenses. We have delayed projects and maintenance where possible. We've extended the lives of vehicles and equipment while still keeping all of our services at least at the minimum standards. All departments have worked diligently to seek all cost savings, any cost saving measures available to them. And another thing we did, we also looked at our revenue and updated our fees. We just did that recently. Our building permit fees needed to go up to be on the same level as surrounding communities, and that we increased that by 15%. So that was included in the budget. And we also looked at how we do our economic development policies and what fees we're waiving and what incentives we're giving, and trying to keep that at a lower level than we had been, just to help the budget as well. So after we did all that, and you remember this sheet, the next one, Kelly?
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry.
It's little, but this is where we added in the revenues a little bit higher than we thought because the way sales tax are coming in, franchise fees are coming in a little higher. We're finally kind of reaping some of those rewards of the programs we've put into place. We've cut all the expenses that we could, and we think we can maintain the general fund with about a 13%. That's if we spent everything in our budget, which we usually do not try to do. Some of that is a little bit of contingencies we've left in there. Hopefully we won't have to spend those. So we will be where we need to be to maintain our 15% level, mainly to help with our bond rating so that anything we do, we can have the most cost-effective borrowings that we can and the interest rates at the lowest we can. The next one was just kind of seeing our forecasted projection of the general fund and where we might need to be in the next few years, how we can stay where we are. And we went over and over this. Is there anything else that I need to bring up at this time?
I think it's important to note, too, that we went 5 years without a tax increase. And so when we did our increase last year, I know myself, and I'm sure that we're not exempt from feeling the sting of the increase to the taxes. And when you have a large tax increase like we did last year, and I think in retrospect, we've all agreed that had we done it differently and done incremental increases, we may not be having this conversation. But when we went 5 years, and you all worked very diligently in all the departments to make significant cuts, and I know the general public is not aware of a lot of that, but it came to the point last year when we had to do something about that, because we hear about all of the things that are not being done. So we did it last year, and that sent a significant bite to many, including myself. And this year, we're not finished to the tune of at least 1.5 mils. Because I think our fire and EMS can attest to the fact that due to the number of calls that we have and the call response time, that individual that we are now going to be able to include this year is very necessary, as well as PD. We need those shifts fully staffed so that they can continue to make things so that you and I can sleep at nights and have the ease of what's getting taken care of in our community. They do their very best to respond, but it's a comfort to know that we have an adequate, a very adequate, better than adequate staff. So that's what we're doing this year with the mill increase. Hopefully, as we move forward, we will be able to evaluate these things a little differently and smaller at a time so that we can plan ahead and not have a huge bite like we did last year. And since you're still feeling that this year, that's my take on that. So I don't know if my co-commissioners want to add anything to that or not.
So we deferred some vehicle replacements. Are we still, did we expand out the number of maintenance areas so that we're actually doing that a little bit on a more protracted schedule?
Yes, we're going to be bringing that to you. We're working through all the details of that.
Okay. So, I mean, there's a whole lot of hard work that's been done here. The commission has gone about as far as we can without us actually going in with a pencil and eliminating positions and eliminating roles within the organization, or actually cutting services that affect the public. And that's where we're at. It's unfortunate. I actually wanted to end all transfers to the general fund even, but this commission is a solid commission and one commission that actually stands together. So, you know, that's where we're at today. We don't take this role lightly, and I don't believe any of the staff does either.
I would also like to point out what we all know about, you know, the labor shortage, but also the pay scales. You know, I don't know how many open positions we have up and down the ladder of all of our employees, but there's a significant amount. And, you know, when you can go to the next county over, the next town over, and make $5 an hour more, or $7, or whatever it is, that's happening. And it's tough because, you know, every one of us, we pay property tax just like everybody, just like the public. We are the public. And we don't want to pay more either, yet we need quality people to run and to operate all the services that we have here, and you have to pay them at a certain level, and we're, in some instances, we're underpaid what other jurisdictions can pay. So, you know, it's a balancing act here of we're trying to keep everybody's taxes at a certain level, and yet these costs continue. You know, inflation is eating away at everything. So you know, what do you do? And I think we all have fairly level heads here, and we try and do like a common sense approach. So I feel fairly comfortable with how we approach things, the five of us, and how we process through, and with staff, you know, giving us all the information. I really think we do a pretty decent job.
Last year at this very meeting, I spent almost an hour going through a PowerPoint that I'd put together, and the net result of that was basically, if you take a look at the growth of Newton in the last 25 or 30 years, you know, expenses are going to go up over a period of time. And if you take a look at our expenses, the expenses aren't out of line. Where we really got behind is the lack of growth that we've experienced in the commercial side of our tax base. And I think I referred to it as pathetic in my PowerPoint presentation. And really, it's not anybody's fault. I mean, it's a combination of multiple factors that put yourself in a position to where you can actually create an environment where it's easier to attract businesses to come to your community. And I would say that this commission has done, working with Hughes Newton and working with Harvey County Economic Development, has done a he-man's job of being noticed and working on a regional effort to attract industrial development and commercial development into our community. You know, currently we have somewhere close to $400 million worth of projects that are in the pipeline. You know, the largest one being GAF that everybody's very anxiously awaiting for them to turn some dirt out there. And that in itself has created the environment where you see Quick Trip out here turning dirt right now. You know, we've got a new Starbucks in town. There's lots of things that happen. 700 or 800 houses that are either in the process of being planned or actually built right now. I think new home starts this year are 5 or 6 times higher than all of last year already. So there's a lot of good things that are happening, but that doesn't take care of this gap between when the good stuff is going to happen and when you actually realize an increase in revenue from taxes from new stuff and not more taxes from people that are already paying tax. The hard part is managing your expenses in the meantime, where you know, after experiencing 2 years of between 10 and 12% inflation on city-related matters, and like Leroy said, the increase in wage base, probably 25 to 30% when you look at it. You know, you're wanting to hold your city together. You're wanting to keep your employees happy. You're wanting to keep your employees paid. You've got to pay your expenses, and we have cut to the bone, and I'm pretty proud that of our staff that they've rolled their sleeves up, and they've been doing that now for 7 or 8 years. When Donna started work, she didn't have any gray hair. So, but anyway. Yeah, just so you know, I mean, I'm going to vote in favor of the 1.5 mil increase, but I didn't do it. I didn't flip a coin. I mean, I did some real hard work, and so did everybody else, and this isn't a decision we take lightly. I do know oftentimes when it you know, people see their taxes going up and they don't see the relief because, you know, it takes a little while, 50 years of no growth. And I mean, to expect that things are going to turn around in 4 or 5 years, it just isn't going to happen. So the question is, you know, do you trim things off to take that edge off that you have now that's kind of giving you the advantage when you're soliciting new business out there? So, you know, we're hoping people are patient. I know, you know, there's a chance, and I would say, you know, the history, when people raise taxes, they end up getting voted out. You know, as commissioners, then you end up with people that promise to do things that don't really have the ability to do it. So I would caution you to be careful and really pay attention to what we do, and, you know, try not to get too upset with the fact that we're in a quagmire right here that we don't like either, but we're all here, and we all show up, and we all work hard, and we're willing to take the heat for increasing the taxes if we can see it's going to get us somewhere. And we're certainly not ready to shut the lights off and say, you know, Chief, you need to let 4 or 5 guys go, and you know, and we're going to change our response time on getting to a fire. You know, 8 or 9 minutes isn't going to matter that much. You know, we're a long way from that. This is a great community, and you know, we hope you try to understand, but we're not going to turn our backs on the job that we have to do, and I'm pretty proud of the hard work that we put into this.
I would also like to add on to that just in simple terms, you know, the homeowner, the percentage of your property tax as opposed to your commercial and industrial. A commercial and industrial is double that percentage rate. And so that's why we're trying to push so hard to bring commercial and industrial businesses to the community, because they pay a much higher rate of taxes that will then, as time goes on, takes the burden off of each one of us homeowners. Because, you know, right now it's like, man, it just seems like we keep attacking the homeowners, and that's once we you know, when we're already doing that, expanding that tax base of the commercial industrial, well, that takes that pressure off. So that's why we want to focus on that so much, and not put the pressure on the homeowner.
Mayor, if I may, before you open to public comment again, I just wanted to make a clarifying statement to Commissioner Stenett's point about if someone perhaps didn't watch the previous budget sessions when we did work sessions or talked about this in the past. So there is a transfer from the utility funds to support the general fund from both water and wastewater. And that is partially a policy decision that was made many years ago by many of your predecessors, because unbeknownst to most of us, there are about 30 to 35% of properties in the city of Newton or our response jurisdiction, since we respond outside of city of Newton, that are completely property tax exempt. That might be the schools, that might be the hospitals, that might be assisted living facilities, those kinds of things, but they do pay utilities. And so that is one of the reasons that policy decision was made years ago to transfer, excuse me real quick here. Our screens are going to shut down, I apologize. To that decision was made a few years back to make those transfers from the utility funds to the general fund. And just Commissioner mentioned that, so in case somebody didn't watch the previous budget sessions, that's kind of where that came into play. And also, I know Commissioner Vice Mayor Cry made mention of the increasing cost of personnel. And yes, we have seen these 20-30% inflationary costs of wages, not at the city levels, but nationwide, I believe is his comment. Actually, we gave a 2% cost of living to our employees. That is built into this budget. So yes, there's a huge cost, and we're trying desperately to do other things outside of just, we just want to take care of our own very much so, and we've done many other personnel things such as any non-essential position, even some essential positions, like we talked about, fire, EMS, and PD. I don't want to pick on those in individual departments, but any non-essential personnel we have left open for weeks, months at a time, if not 6 or 8 months at a time, just trying to get by. And we've been doing those kinds of things for several years now. We've cut, I believe it was between $500,000 and $800,000 out of last year's budget, and the same or more before that. And kind of what saved our tail in the general fund was we got some of those ARPA federal funds, and that bolstered up our general fund, so we weren't really facing the shortfalls until really last year and this year particularly. So just a few little comments to throw out there if you hadn't watched our previous budget sessions. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, at this time, we're going to open the public hearing for citizens to speak about the budget.
Commissioners, Lori Hartke, 707 West 6th Street. And is that better? I wonder, I'm not happy about the tax raise either, and I am facing maybe having to give up my house in a few years if things don't improve. That said, I wonder how many of the people here come to the meetings or watch them on the internet or whatever, come to the work sessions, know how hard the staff has worked, know how you were given choices. We can do this or this or this, and you made very difficult choices. I'm with you guys. I don't want to see it go up either, but I recognize how hard you've all worked, all of you, and I don't want the public to think that you're just, who cares, raise the rate. Because that's not the way it is. It may have been in the past, but it's not now, and I want people to appreciate everything that you all have done for the city.
Lori.
Thank you, Lori.
You're welcome.
I'm hoping you can answer, well, I know you can answer a question for me, and I truly don't know the answer to this, and I don't know if anybody else does, but in the gallery, whenever I read or hear about new businesses coming to town, I always hear about tax abatements, or they don't have to pay taxes. How many of those do we have currently, and why do we do that if we're needing more tax income?
Can I answer that? Yeah. You do it because if you don't do it, somebody else will, and you'll never get a larger company. And that's an absolute fact. I see you shaking your head no, but it's the truth.
Oh, I understand it's
yeah,
the truth. I
yeah.
just don't agree with you.
So, well, you have the right to disagree with me, but I've been doing economic development for 45 years, and it's just the truth. So, what you hope for when that happens is that you increase the activity outside of that tax abatement, which is what we've done. And we would have never had Quick Trip come in. We would have probably Starbucks wouldn't have come to town. People wouldn't be building houses right now. So there are. I'm chairman of economic development also, and there's 3 or 4 other companies that are going to be coming to town with GAF that won't ask for tax abatements, that are suppliers to them, that will build property and have employees in Harvey County. That is the whole premise behind giving the tax abatements. If we'd have been given tax abatements 10 years ago, those people would be paying tax right now. There are people that do have a history of what they call build and bail, where they'll go in. Amazon's been known to do this, where they go into a community and they'll build a facility and they'll get a 10-year tax abatement, and usually they can stretch that out to 11 because of the timing from when it goes on the tax roll. And in that period of time, they've recovered the cost of the building, and then they just don't pay their tax, and maybe somebody else ends up with it. But still, it's an asset. And the one thing about property tax is that they attach to the property. So if somebody doesn't pay their tax and somebody else ends up with the building, then somebody's going to end up having to pay that tax in order to get clear title to the property at some point in time. But that's why you give tax abatements. And I know there's people that don't agree with that, but it's working in Harvey County right now, and we wouldn't have got GAF if we hadn't. Well, statutorily, there was nothing we could do about it because they're going to apply for industrial revenue bonds, and with that is going to be an automatic 10-year tax abatement. So.
And if I could, sir, maybe to Mr. and Mrs. Scott's question, if I could, maybe not specific to an individual project, but the Newton Commission decided, and the Harvey County Economic Development Coalition, their board, decided many years ago that they would put a procedure in place for a return on investment study for everyone who made a request for those statutorily available tax abatements. So an ROI study is done, and if there is a return on the investment of less than a certain number, and that does take into account not just the rebate of those property taxes, but what those employees will be paid, what they will, I mean, there's a formula for how many live in the community, how many live outside the community, how much they're going to spend in fuel tax and sales tax and those kind of tertiary kind of incomes, and all of those things are taken into effect. And then the EDC board reviews that request from the business, and then eventually that request goes before not just the city, but then also the county, also the school district, and then ultimately the state. Typically, the state's the ultimate winner on those ROIs, as we've known over the years. Like the city's return on investment may be like 2 to 1, and the state's might be like 25 to 1. And we always say, "Oh, yay, we're glad for the state," but still. But if that's a broader answer to perhaps your question, and also I would note that there are only specific businesses that are eligible for those tax abatements. So it is something, as Vice Mayor noted. So those are typically industries, most commercial, most retail, and there are a few residential projects that might qualify, but none of the ones so like I know we're throwing Quick Trip out there just because everybody's happy to see the dirt move in, as we are too, but they haven't asked for anything. They just came here because the market was in demand for them. So those are good things. I mean, just if that's helpful context, and not just a particular property or a particular project.
Yeah.
You want to
Thanks for asking.
explain the RHID and how that type of an abatement actually lets the city avoid building infrastructure? and put it in
Sure,
the
yeah,
development?
yeah, we want to talk about that. So there are a few, Commissioner Sennett's question about reinvestment housing incentive districts, RHIDs. That is another statutory program specific to residential. And it can be either in a downtown on a second floor, like apartment buildings or those kind of things for rehabilitation, or it can be a brand new housing development. It can be a smaller section of one development, Sean Creek Station's when we talked about recently. It was like former build out of, of some remaining few lots, and then maybe buy offs of newer parcels and larger, like 20, 30 acres at a time. And so that is, again, another investment statutorily authorized program that people can, developers can utilize, and they utilize that to pay for the infrastructure. So think about the things you never see that are underground: the water, the sewer, the gas, the electric, and things you do see: streets, sidewalks, mass grading, detention ponds, those kinds of things. So instead of spreading those as special assessments, which a lot of people think about in new developments, you're having to pay for that as in addition to your taxes to pay those bonds off. They cannot exceed 20 years if you do a special bond. Instead of doing that, the developers are utilizing these RHID programs, and they're paying cash up front. So then the property owner pays in their sales tax as normal, and then the developer who paid for the infrastructure gets a rebate of a portion of those taxes back. But the city, the county, especially the state and the school district, they never lose out on what they were getting even up front as a greenfield lot. So you never have less than what you're.
You said sales tax, but.
Oh, excuse me, property tax, excuse me.
Property tax, yeah.
Yeah, property tax, excuse me, not sales tax. That's a very important differentiation. Does that answer your question, sir?
Thank you.
Roger Kornfeld. I have a couple of properties, houses that I rent in Newton, as well as I represent my dad's interest, who's a resident, homeowner resident at 133 Sheffield Court here in Newton. This is my third meeting of this type today. So I'm going to go ahead and go with my previously prepared comments, and then maybe ad lib a few things in at the end based on some of the discussion. I guess just a reminder that the city has no money other than what it brings from its citizens that pay the taxes. The time to collect the information, compile it into some understanding, and prepare a response is significant. It's hard for most people to allocate time in their lives to be monitoring and inputting to this process, and many of them cannot. At least your meeting is in the evening as opposed to the daytime, where it's a little more accessible to people that typically work a daytime shift. But so anyway, due to these points, I suggest that each person that presents a viewpoint actually represents a huge percentage of people that are likely like-minded and simply aren't able or intimidated to speak in a public meeting. I'm going to skip a few things. I think it must be recognized that seniors on fixed incomes simply are not getting increases in their Social Security that can cover the tax increases that are coming at them from various angles. So what I see, and I think it's already been alluded to, a huge tax increase last year of 20.6% that got by me. I was asleep at the wheel, I guess, when that happened. Following that up with the 12.6%, which is what I'm seeing. You can correct me if my numbers are wrong, proposed for this year. Those are huge numbers relative to the historical average. That was explained somewhat. I do appreciate that effort at bringing forth some of that, where that comes from. talking in percentages, while useful, it's a bit harder to relate to. So for my dad's case, and he's looking at over a 290 a year increase, of which nearly half is from the city contribution. So my question to the council, I know you've kind of already addressed it to some degree, is there more pencil sharpening that can be done? More ways that the spending can be reduced to keep these huge tax increases under control. I know no one wants to cut positions or services, but I think it has to always be asked. You know, when someone complains to you about cut services, I know you feel that personally, and I understand that. But also, I think one answer you could give is that the people paying the bills simply said, no, we've had enough. We cannot continue to pay the levels of taxes that we're paying. And if that means cutting services, then that's what it has to mean. So I guess I just want to add, as mentioned, this is my third meeting like this of the day. I want to commend you for this. I do sense sensitivity, and I appreciate that. I do sense professionalism, and I appreciate that. And so, you know, that it kind of, in some ways, it's, you know, steals the thunder, but on the other hand, I would just say that, you know, my dad, my renters, that I will have to pass increases in rent onto from these kinds of numbers. They can't put feeling good about their city commissioners on their table. You know, the money still has to be paid. And I think that's just an important thing to consider, that that it's still very hurtful, the dollars that have to be given up for the for living in the city of Newton and in Harvey County. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Roger. Who's next? Well, at this time, we're going to close the public hearing, and we're going to move on to considering the adoption of the 2024 budget.
Is it in the form of a resolution? Is it? Okay.
I would make the motion that we adopt the 2024 budget as presented.
I will second that.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes. Okay, item number 3, chili cook-off. We're going to consider a request to close 6th Street from popular domain on September 23 for the United Way Chili Cook-Off and for picnic tables, snow fencing, electricity, and trash containers. Denise?
Yes, thank you. This is a request to close 6th Street, and I'll go ahead and wait.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, this is a request from the Harvey County United Way to close 6th Street on September 23rd, and they are also asking for city assistance for picnic tables, trash containers, and barricades for the alley and electricity. And staff has looked this over and are okay with that. And if you'll let me just continue on with this, they are also applying for a temporary alcohol permit for the chili cook-off, and that is going to be through Grace Hill Winery that they would do that. And because it is on a city street, that brings us to item number C, there has to be a resolution by the governing body approving that it is on because it's on a city street. So you will need to take 3 different actions at this point.
I would move that we approve the request.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Now for the temporary alcohol permit.
So we need to approve the application for the permit.
Yes.
I do that.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes. And now for the resolution number.
Yes, that number will be G1319.
I move we approve resolution G1319.
I'll second.
I'll just pick one.
This is tie night.
There is a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes. Blues, Brews, and Barbecue. We're going to consider a request for city assistance for picnic tables, trash containers, and snow fencing for the Blues, Brews, and Barbecue event on September 23, 2023 in Athletic Park.
Okay, this is a request to receive city assistance for those things that you mentioned, and staff has looked at that request and are okay with that request. Also with that, you will have an application for a temporary alcohol permit, and this one does not need a resolution because it is on city property, and so you would just need to have 2 actions there to approve the city assistance and then also the application.
I'd move we approve the request for city assistance for picnic tables and other stuff.
I second that.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
I move that we approve their application for a temporary alcohol permit for Blues, Brews, and Barbecue.
Cheers. Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. Okay, city code updates. Consider an ordinance adopting the 2023 edition of the standard traffic ordinances.
I can lead on this one. Annual consideration by the City Commission to update the STO and the UPOC, and just for the benefit of the public, the STO, what we refer to as the standard traffic ordinance, the UPOC or the UPOC is essentially criminal ordinances. The Kansas League of Municipalities puts out this book every year, or these 2 books, and it essentially mirrors state law. We can't prosecute a state law provision in city court, but once we adopt it by ordinance, we can. So you'll see a lot of crossover. DUI is a Kansas statute, and you'll also find it in the STO. So we set it up. Sometimes we'll do this on the consent agenda. But because of the T21, that would be the 3rd element. The state law changed. As you recall, it used to be 18 to possess tobacco. The city in 2019 adopted our T21 ordinance, raising that age to 21. State law has now changed it to 21. It isn't identical to what we currently have on the books, but it does raise the age to 21. The city staff recommendation is in adopting the UPOC to also consider a repeal of our T21 ordinance to get us just in line with state law. As you recall, the 2019 T21 ordinance did essentially decriminalize the possession. The state law and the comparable UPOC provision does criminalize it to the extent of it being a local infraction subject to a $25 fine. It's not, say, a Class B misdemeanor, which would be in the provision in terms of the distribution. So if you have that distribution from a person of age that provides it to an underage person, they're subject to a Class B misdemeanor, but the person that possesses is subject to the $25 infraction. I would stand for any questions on that. There is an overview on the other changes, the standard changes to the STO and UPOC. And again, those typically just reflect changes in state law and other cleanup items. Nothing too significant, but all the changes are included there in the memo.
I think it's important to point out that as an infraction, that doesn't land on the permanent record, so that doesn't.
Right. That would be something that would be, there'd be obviously a record here at City Court, but I noted that in the memo, certain offenses are reported up to go on your criminal history. This would not be one. In terms of the possession, the sale could be, but possession definitely not.
And then chief officers still have discretion as to how they're going to deal with somebody under 21.
Yes, just like in a traffic infraction or anything like that, that they have the ability to, or the authority to issue a citation or not issue. The same thing would be for a high school student that may be in possession of tobacco products. Same thing.
Thank you.
Okay, what's the ordinance number?
So, yeah, and we would have three separate ordinances. The first would be, I believe, the STO, the second, the UPOC, and the third, the T21 repealer. And Denise can give you the first ordinance number.
Yes, the STO would be 5126-23.
I move that we approve ordinance 5126-23.
I will second that.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Next is the ordinance number.
5127-23.
I move we approve ordinance 5127-23.
I'll
I
second.
second.
I waited.
We are on a roll
I know, I
tonight.
did too. I thought, okay.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and one more number.
5128-23.
And I move that we approve 512823.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. At number 6, we're going to consider awarding the contract for the furniture and shelving bids for the Newton Public Library project. Suzanne.
Yes, Commissioners, on August 9th, we had a bid opening for furniture and shelving for our library project. For the shelving, we had 3 bidders, and Library Bureau Steel was the low bidder at $181,115.82. We would recommend that we award bids to that supplier. Then on the furniture, and I should say, this was a good bid process. We had a lot of bids, and everything was really close. Everything was tight. So I think it was a really good process, and I was pleased to see we had so many that were bidding on these items. On the furniture portion, we had 4 different suppliers, vendors, if you will, that were bidding on the project. We had a lot of items. There's a lot of different chairs and tables and all kinds of different desks and things that will be in the new library. Remembering that this project, the project budget for the furniture and the shelving allowed for $448,740. And that came out of the original $10+ million budget for the overall building project, of which the city of Newton is paying $4.5 million. And the remainder was, the remainder of those costs is coming from volunteer funds, people that have contributed to the project through the library and their fundraising efforts. Now, the furniture bid package, we put this together, when we bid the project, we did this so that we could allow for a selective award of contract based on any combination of all of the items. And it's quite a process to go through determining who's low on which item and how you put the package together in the end so that you spend the least amount of money. And we had 2 different options that we looked at, and the very lowest bid package included all 4 of the folks that bid. But so that we don't have to deal with yet another vendor, we are recommending that for an additional $43.19, we only go with 3 of those bidders. Because there's a lot of things we're juggling on this project, and we have to make sure that we get the furniture here on time at the right time period, and getting all of that coordinated is very difficult because we need the furniture to come in the 2-month block where the library will be moving from their old facility to the new facility, and we can't put any furniture in until the building is completed, and then they're going to open back up. So we're recommending the package where John A. Marshall Company would receive a contract for $127,292.10, Office Plus of Kansas for $45,529.98, and Pure Workplace Solutions would be $28,003.82. That total for the furniture is $200,825.29. And when you add that with the shelving, it's a total of $383,941.72, which is below the budget of the $448,740. So again, we're asking that we award bids to the second highest combination that is only higher by $43.19 to allow us to have less coordination with vendors.
I would move that we accept the bids as presented.
I second.
There is a motion in 2 seconds. Any further,
It's like those buzzers, like they used to have on the
I
game.
know. Game show, but-
any further discussion?
I would say that it was really neat seeing all the local regional
Yeah.
vendors participating in this,
Yeah, that's
not the big boys out of state.
Always pleased
We
by
tried to
That was
catch them
really
all.
great.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Thank you.
That- Let's see, and that takes care of both of those. Okay, then they're going to consider approval of the governing body handbook. Rebecca?
Yes, thank you all. As you know, we reviewed this once at a prior meeting, and this is the governing body handbook. We reviewed it with you all as a city commission at a public meeting with our legal, financial, and administrative staff as well to correct any final wordings or how that's applied to us. As a reminder, this is very similar to what the league puts out, but this one is very specific to Newton and the policies and the procedures therein. The document will continue to be a working document, so if you still find any other last-minute typos that we didn't catch in our latest update that was republished, let us know. And also, one question that came was whether there'd be any disciplinary action. It is only a guide, and so there's no room or authority for that. So, stand for any questions.
Thank you for the work.
A lot of hard
Thank you
work
for
went into this.
accepting my edits.
We
Anytime.
appreciate them very much.
I did. You got them.
Yeah, you got
They, I had them typed up and then they were already there. It's like
Yeah.
you read my mind.
We live what to say.
I would make the motion that we approve this working document, the government body handbook, as presented.
I second that.
There is a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next we're going to consider approval of the Code of Meeting Procedures.
Yes, thank you. And again, just like the previous document, we've gone through the same procedure, presenting it at a public meeting and letting you all and various staff members review and edit as needed. This would be for how you conduct yourselves at these public meetings. We don't have an official Robert's Rules of Order adopted or any other similar document. So this would be a really wonderful thing to have for you all to reference, and also that could be applicable to the other boards and commissions. So.
Well, I will move that we approve the meeting procedures.
I will second.
Okay, there is a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I would like to say, is this where we would like add an attachment for how to open a public hearing or?
We could certainly add that in there. I think we've had a
We have a
general
little
piece of paper
we have a
floating
piece of
up on the
paper
bench,
floating,
but
but-
we could certainly add that in here. Again, these need to be
good.
continued to updated, so we can certainly look through that.
Especially you all do a lot of these kind of things as does planning commission, but rarely there would be a perceivable opportunity for another board or commission to do these public hearings. And so that would probably be good to know what the protocol is. Like, how do you open? How do you close? How do you take comments? How long do you let an individual citizen speak without being rude, but getting their point across? I mean, those kinds of things that would probably, to your point, Sarah, be very helpful.
Certainly, we can bring back another copy with that added.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes.
Thank you.
Now have a citizens forum with nobody signed up.
Nobody had signed up on the form. I think they're all from the budget hearing.
Okay. Very good. Well, let's see, we started with you last time, did we not, Rich?
Yep.
So, Vice Mayor.
It's me, okay. I want to thank Lori for getting up there, and, you know, she knows how we toil over these things, and, and it's too bad more people don't come, and we appreciate you coming to a lot of the meetings, too.
Yes.
You two are familiar faces, and certainly appreciate that. I do want to tell the general public, too, you know, oftentimes I see comments on social media that act like there's some special group that never has to worry about getting in trouble in this town because they're special people, and the police just doesn't mess with these people, and the city employees don't mess with people. So I want to show the infraction I got today. I got to watch the guy put it on my front door through my my Ring camera, and he didn't just run off. You know, he wasn't afraid to do it. So I think he knows. I mean, I had limbs in right away, and I received an infraction, and then my wife reminded me. She told me to call last week. And obviously I forgot, or they wouldn't have had to give me this infraction. So I called today, and that way I was able to avoid the extra $10 charge because I actually read this, and all is good now. The limbs will be gone next Tuesday, and everybody will be happy. So the system does work, and I received no special treatment.
Are these the same limbs over on the north side that grew again after several years?
We move them around.
Just
to
pay the
avoid-
$10 so they go away.
Yeah. Anyway, it was pretty, when I saw it on my door, I thought, yeah. And so it happens to even people that think that other people think get special treatment, so.
Well, I would agree. Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Mr. Glass, for your faithfulness. I think that's important. It was very encouraging to hear that. It's kind of a witness or a testimony to what you really see and what really goes on, so we thank you for it. And again, thank you to our staff, all of you, for all of the hard work that you put into all that we work on and decide on every month. So thank you.
Well, I just want to say that it is hard during a public hearing that we can't answer them, we can't talk to them. I want them to know that we do listen, staff listens to everything they say, and makes me want to go back and save as much money as I can next year, so maybe we won't have to go up. So, you know, so we do listen to what they say, and we all are in this together.
No, sir.
Just two really quick things. We are pleased to share hosting for Senator Marshall tomorrow. He will be in town at an invitation event at one of our private businesses, and I know Mayor's going to be there to be able to attend, so we're always happy to host our federal delegation members when they're available. And also, we will be hosting some officials, high-level officials from Amtrak tomorrow. They are in Wichita this evening and tomorrow morning, and then they will be meeting with several of us tomorrow here on site. We will take a little quickie tour in the afternoon heat of the outside of the platforms where the passengers board and get off the train, on the train. Again, we don't normally see a lot of those folks because they get on between 2:30 and 3:30 or 4 in the morning. But they are there, and so we'll try to beat the heat and do a real quick tour, and then we will have a more in-depth discussion inside the AC, hopefully. So we're really pleased to host those individuals. Recall that we are part of a working group with several other communities on the Heartland Flower Extension Line, which currently goes from Fort Worth to Oklahoma City. The expansion will be from Oklahoma City to Newton through Wichita as a reopening of a line that was available in the 70s. And we are, not only the local jurisdictions, but KDOT, ODOT, and TxDOT are all part of that as well. And we are still in the running for a very large federal grant that would pay for a lot of those improvements, not just to the line, but for additional passenger rail services and improvements to our depots and platforms. So we're, like I said, always pleased to host that.
I just wanted to say, the 23rd is going to be a great weekend here in Newton with the chili cook-off and the Blues, Brews, and barbecues. So that's a great weekend. I envision a Newton here in the near future on the heels of GAF coming and downstream suppliers maybe relocating in the area to expanding our employment base, expanding our property tax base. I want to try and think big and see how we can capture the traffic coming out of Salina and areas north headed down to the new casinos in Park City. We don't need that mess here, but we need to at least be able to capture some of that traffic and that revenue passing through our community and everything. Yeah. Activity, we had a little knock on the door yesterday because they, Idea Tech is pulling fiber conduit in our neighbor and everything. And I was really impressed with how they were doing their work and how they were respecting the properties and everything. It was really, really cool. I was glad I wasn't unblocked to the east because then we got to see all of our first responders because I think they hit a gas line. So that brought all the vehicles out and everything. But the process works. They're respectful and everything. And everybody responded to that issue very, very quickly. So that's it.
Thank you. Well, I too would like to thank you, Lori, and for both of you for being here. You're kind of mainstays, and we appreciate that very much. I had a citizen reach out to me, and I invited him to my office this afternoon, and he talked about, in the same vein of getting picked on, so to speak, of how he wanted to know how some neighborhoods of the city, it seemed like people could get away with cars parked in the grass and this and that going on, and yet he seemed to be getting picked on a lot, and I said, well, I will definitely follow up with that, and I appreciated him reaching out, and the thing is, we're citizens too, and when we see something that doesn't quite make sense, we need to communicate that and be verbal about it, and so, I appreciated him coming because he has a right to his opinion. He's a homeowner, he pays taxes and all that, so I agree, and what you were saying, Rich, I envision at some point in the future a downtown venue close to, let's just say Amtrak, let's say the two lines merge and we have increased traffic, and we could have a downtown venue across the tracks there where the old Dollar General was, and I think we could have a really, really cool situation here in a lot of areas, and so I think we just have to keep our nose to the grindstone, keep trying to make these tough decisions, and don't take them lightly, and which none of us do. We all take it pretty serious. So appreciate all of you. That's it. We're adjourned.